Welcome to Calgary Conversations, a podcast of the City of Calgary where we aim to have frank conversations with city leaders about the issues and topics impacting Calgarians.
Please stand behind the yellow line.
My name is Jose Rodriguez. I am the leader of Media Relations and Employee Communications at the city, and I'm happy to be your host. Welcome back to Calgary Conversations, and today we're very fortunate to be discussing what is being discussed around many Calgary kitchen tables and in headlines and in other places, and that's housing. And with us today to have that conversation, we have our Chief Housing Officer, Reid Hendry, and we also have Bev Jarvis, the Communications and Engagement Director of Onward Homes. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Housing, affordable housing, as mentioned, everybody seems to be talking about it. You don't have a conversation about Calgary without talking about housing. You both play separate roles in trying to find a solution. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about each of your roles in the housing puzzle. And maybe I'll start with you, Reid.
So as mentioned, I'm the Chief Housing Officer. My main priority, summed up into a sentence, is enabling supply, choice, and affordability as it relates to housing for all Calgarians. Getting a little bit deeper, that really comes down to a lot of advocacy, a lot of working with other orders of government, the teams that exist within the City of Calgary, and then really importantly, investment. A lot of distributing of grants of different variety of financial support, either in the form of resources, land, or of course, dollars to get that housing built and out to Calgarians.
Awesome. And Bev, what's your role in this puzzle?
Yeah, certainly, Jose. Well, I've actually had a number of puzzle pieces in the housing world over the course of a career. Currently, I'm working in non-market housing with Onward Homes. Onward is an affordable housing provider in the City of Calgary. My role is to interface quite regularly with all orders of government, particularly with the City of Calgary, as we all strive together to solve our housing crisis best that we can.
Now, you sort of touched on it, and I know that you both have a rich history in the private sector, whether it's development or housing or those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your expertise, your experience, your background, and how it helps with the issue we're trying to solve today. And maybe I'll start with you, Bev.
Sure, absolutely, Jose. So as I mentioned, I have quite a long history in housing and varied at that. I started out in market housing. So I was a real estate sales agent with resale homes and also selling new homes in new communities on the edge of Calgary back when Arbor Lake was right on the edge of development. So that goes back a little bit. Needless to say, but then along the way, I've worked with commercial developers who have done retail and mixed use housing and mixed use projects combining commercial, retail, and office. And more for a little bit over a decade, I worked with Build. And Build's the association that represents builders and developers in the City of Calgary. So all market housing through them, advocacy with the City of Calgary, worked a lot with colleagues within the city on policy and process. And then, like I said, more recently, I have adopted my role with Onward Homes for the last couple of years in the non-for-profit side. And I also am currently chair of the Council Advisory Committee on Housing and work with Reid, who is our lead administrative representative.
How do you think that kind of background helps you with what you're doing today?
Absolutely. So firstly, I didn't mention, but while I was working with the association representing builders and developers, I also had the privilege of being a co-chair on CHAC. And CHAC was the Community Housing Affordability Collective. And as the name says, it was a community collective, grassroots, with representation on our steering committee across the entire spectrum of housing. So we had representation from homelessness shelters, supported housing, affordable housing, market rents, and market housing. And while it no longer exists, the most important learning for me from that experience was to appreciate housing as a continuum and to understand that market and non-market are interrelated. They're part of an ecosystem, if you will. And through that work, understanding that you cannot do harm to one element of the continuum because it will have ripple effects across the continuum. So that was very important in learnings to me. The other piece I would say is probably on the government relations side. At Onward, in not-for-profit housing, it costs us the same amount of money basically to construct a 6-story wood apartment building as it would a market housing provider. The difference for us, the delta in how we provide that affordability is in discounted land, cheaper financing, low-cost financing, and grants. And that delta on that piece is the delta on affordability. So the way we achieve that is all orders of government have an impact on those 3 critical pieces of affordability. And so the government relations side has helped me in my work with Onward to be able to connect with all orders to advance those 3 critical pieces of housing.
Impressive. And Reid, you also have a pretty impressive resume.
That's very kind. Yeah, I mean, my background really started when I was 17. I got a job with Stantec, a rather large engineering consulting firm that touches a lot of different things. I worked with them every year, every summer, effectively, while I was going through school. And through that process, I jumped from consultant, contractor, doing deep utilities, roads, sidewalks, those sort of things, transitioned into developer, home builder, touched commercial, residential, low-rise, mid-rise, and then most recently, industrial development. And so when I saw the job posting, I've been in the role now for 6 months, since January. And when I saw the job posting late last year, I really thought to myself, how can I make an impact? The thing I left out is born and raised in Calgary. Calgary is a city that's immensely important to me. I really am invested in its future. And so when I saw this opportunity, I wanted to jump in and take the experience that I had on the private sector, working with the City of Calgary, working with people like Bev and others, and be able to work directly as a city employee to affect that change for Calgarians.
Sweet. Now, it's hard to talk about housing without talking about rezoning. Largest public hearing in the City of Calgary's history. People are invested. There's a lot of interest. Can you explain, how does rezoning help with affordability and availability when it comes to housing?
Generally, we can think of it in 2 ways. Rezoning for housing, as we like to call it, is really that. It's a blanket rezoning of the city meant to encourage housing. And how that will cause affordability is through 2 main avenues. One is that we are creating more supply. Right? And so overall, if we can take a single family home and turn it into a duplex or turn it into a 4-plex or potentially larger, what that does is it creates more supply in the system. And that will have a lowering effect on prices just based on laws of supply and demand from economics. The other piece is that it's a bit of a nuanced term, but it's called filtering or vacancy chains. And really what that is speaking to is the fact that by creating housing potentially at the top end of the market, because anything that's brand new, a brand new Honda Civic is more expensive than an old Honda Civic, right? A brand new house is going to be more expensive than an older house. But what it does is it allows those that are maybe in a smaller property that have the financial means, they can move into a larger property. They can move into a brand new home that they would like, that fits their needs now. And that entire chain filters through the system. And as you can imagine, if we can create one single family house, gets transitioned into 4 townhomes, for example, you then create 4 chains. And it filters through the system all the way down, creating, going back to the earlier message, supply, choice, and affordability for Calgarians.
So basically, by having someone move from this stage of life housing, let's say, to the next stage of life housing, that continues to leave vacancies across the board, which creates the housing supply. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And a lot of times what we see, right, is we see people that are in a housing situation or a dynamic that they can afford to move out of, but there's no options. Right? There's nothing in their price point. They might have 2 kids. They might have 3 kids. They might have a grandparent living with them. And so they don't have that option to move into, but they would if they could. And so by us creating, through rezoning for housing, creating additional optionality, that allows that group to vacate, a moderately priced home in a certain community, and they can stay in the same community a lot of the times, but move into something that's more appropriate for them, that meets their needs, and then that frees up their existing property for others, in the chain.
What would you say to somebody who is opposed to blanket rezoning?
I would say, that we hear you. We heard you at, as you mentioned, the lengthy public hearing. Council heard them, right? Council made amendments through that public hearing to adjust parking, to adjust accessory dwelling units, to adjust, permitted uses versus discretionary uses, very nuanced things, but they did listen, right? But overall, we have a housing crisis at the City of Calgary. We have a mounting, ever larger affordability issue. Calgary is an amazing place to live, right? We can continue to see massive in-migration of people. We've received about the population of Kelowna, 175,000 people, give or take, in the last 2 years alone. And with that in mind, it's created this crunch, and we have to take action. And so rezoning for housing is a piece. It's one action. But in the strategy, we have 98 actions. Rezoning for housing is one. We have another 97. And so rezoning for housing by no means is going to solve the problem alone. But ideally, it walks us on that path in conjunction with the other actions that will get us to making housing affordable once again for Calgarians.
And Bev, I think sometimes people get lost in the definitions between housing affordability and affordable housing. Maybe you can speak to what's happening in the affordable housing world as part of the Home is Here strategy.
Certainly. And again, back to the concept of the continuum, they are not unrelated. When we see individuals, for example, in market housing who are struggling to pay rents, and by that I mean rental housing, market rental housing, there's a very good chance that if circumstances change for them, they may slide back and actually end up being on the continuum and end up being in our world and needing affordable housing. So this is why it's critically important, in my opinion, for a healthy market housing as well as non-market piece, because they are connected. In terms of growth, we are certainly undersupplied on the market, non-market affordable housing sector currently, but we are working really closely with the City of Calgary. And recently, Reid's team brought forward the annual progress report on the Home is Here strategy to Council. That report was full of any number of initiatives that have been undertaken by the Housing Solutions team to be able to support the affordable housing in the non-market sector in Calgary. In Onward, we've been able to benefit from some of those opportunities. For example, one of the programs is the Housing Incentive Program, HIP, as we call it. Everything's got an acronym. And,
That's a pretty good one, though. As far as
exactly.
It's
HIP. And, essentially that is a program that allows affordable housing providers to take advantage of some grants available through the city and rebates on on fees through the building and development process. So that's a positive. Also, we have collaborated with the City of Calgary to access federal grant money and federal funding. For example, the Rapid Housing Initiative is one dating back a couple of years that we were able to successfully benefit from in collaboration with the City of Calgary. The City of Calgary has the non-market land disposition program, which I think it's completed the fourth round last year, fifth will be coming up this year. And Onward was fortunate to be a successful applicant for two of those properties. The last piece, and all to the City of Calgary Administration Council's will on this. There's also a program to use transit-oriented lands, underutilized lands for affordable housing. And so recently Onward was able to apply, make a bid, if you will, for the Franklin Station lands. And we will be moving forward with that project in the next couple of years. So there is a lot going on. As I say that, however, there is a tremendous need, and we have a long ways to go to be able to be successful on our targets. But it's a collaboration, and we will continue to work together.
Yeah, and that Franklin development is pretty brilliant, just passed council not that long ago. Could you walk me through, if I'm somebody who is in need of affordable housing, what do I do? How do I interface with your group, or how does that whole scenario look like?
I can tell you that the process to access affordable housing is probably a little bit different from one provider to another. However, in the case of Onward Homes, I can tell you that we work with a number of agencies, almost 60 agencies in the City of Calgary, who do refer individuals to ourselves and also to provide support services while they're settling into an Onward residence. We welcome newcomers to Calgary, youth, seniors, Indigenous populations, underserved populations across Calgary. And as a result, those wonderful agencies that do work with those individuals are the best route to housing with Onward.
And if I can interject as well from the city's perspective, because I think it's important to note, as going back to the 98 actions and what exists, one of them is a program, one of the actions is related to a program called One Window. And the concept of One Window, which has funding through the City of Calgary and is currently being established in consultation with industry, is having a place, a central location where those that are in need of affordable housing can apply through One Window. Right? One centralized location that if they're a senior, we will connect you with available spaces from seniors care providers or senior home providers. Same thing for those that might be family, domestic violence, single men, single women, women with children, men with children, etc. We have all these different demographics that we're focused on and trying to enable. And so we're really excited about that program advancing further in the next year or so here and have that established as soon as possible so that we can really help the non-market partners have a better visibility on what their wait lists look like. Because right now it is quite disjointed, and it really comes down to the people at the end of the day, right? It's not a number on a wait list. It's a human being that is struggling to find accommodations. It's a family that's struggling to find accommodations. And so it's immensely important that we set up a system that addresses that need.
That's brilliant. It's very, very similar to the Fair Entry program, which we have at the city for transit passes and rec passes and things like that. So that's great to hear. It is human beings. It isn't numbers, but I do have to ask a numbers question, which is, do we know what the wait lists or what the backlog or any sort of metrics around how bad the problem is for people to find affordable homes?
Sure. I'll let Bev speak to maybe Onward's waitlist in particular. But there's providers, say Calgary Housing, they have over 7,000 people on their waitlist, or 7,000 families on their waitlist, right? So many more people. In addition, we did a housing needs assessment in 2023. That statement or that needs assessment indicated that there was about 85,000 households that were struggling to pay their bills as it relates to housing. And so that's about 1/5 for perspective. That's about 1/5 of households in Calgary were struggling in 2023. And we know that gap has only widened. Right. And when we use the words household, I also want to maybe help the audience translate, is that when we talk about a household, on average, a house in Calgary has about 2.5 people. So when we talk about 85,000 households, we're talking about over 170,000 Calgarians, right? You're talking over 200,000, you're talking about a lot of people that are struggling. And so we know that need is out there, and we know that need has only grown because Calgary is such a great place to live. It's still relatively a very affordable major metropolitan North American city. If we look at GTA, Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, we're affordable, right? And if you look at the larger macroeconomic picture, we don't have a PST, right? We have a pretty strong job market. I was looking at some data today from Toronto. They're getting close to a 10% unemployment rate, right? And so we see a lot of attraction forces that we know there's a massive need, And it's important that Calgarians know we have the Home is Here strategy approved in 2023, started in 2024, and it runs until 2030, in which we are taking meaningful, dedicated, purposeful action to meeting that need.
Bev, what's your wait list look like?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we work with agencies. So as a result, we do not maintain a wait list. It had been done some years ago, less effective. But I can tell you from the stories that we have and the interface we have with our agencies, when we have available units, agencies are not looking around for someone to take that unit. They're trying to triage the most urgent need among their wait list, which is really heartbreaking in some cases. So, it's we understand that we are not anywhere close to solving our affordable housing problem in Calgary, and our supply issues need to be addressed.
Well, like a housing ICU, right? You have to triage the most needed first. Reid, you've mentioned a couple times 98 recommendations in Home is Here. We know one is getting a lot of attention. Which one isn't getting attention that you'd like to see get more attention?
I jokingly, it's like picking a favorite child, we love them all the same. For me, I would say it's around what we're doing to enable land. The City of Calgary is the largest landholder in the City of Calgary, if that makes sense. Yeah. And what we have is a lot of parcels that might have been used for something that now are no longer scheduled for that use. We might have a road widening that doesn't need to occur anymore, things like that. And in the strategy, we have actions that are dedicated towards really a best-in-class, first-in-class as it comes to Canada, thoughtful readying of that land for housing, and then putting it in the hands of non-market providers quickly and efficiently at typically either book cost, so very inexpensive, or at times nominal cost, so like a toonie, and all with the intention of getting the housing built fast, efficiently, and what I call to the team, rooftops and doorknobs, right? People actually living in there and being able to use the space. And so for me, if I had to pick one that's not getting enough attention and enough respect for how important it is and how innovative it is, it's distributing these city underused land and putting it in the hands of our trusted nonprofit partners to help address this housing crisis.
So logical, eh? It just seems so logical.
It's funny. It's logical, but at the same time, it is immensely challenging because, there's a reason that the city owns this land, and there's a reason why nothing's been done with it. A lot of times it's a gas station from 40 years ago. It's a CP rail caveat from 110 years ago, and you can barely read, what the thing says. So how can you figure out how to clean it up and get it ready for it to actually be purchased or sold or move through the system? And so it takes a lot of dedication from our great real estate and development team here at the city. It takes a lot of dedication from my team. And then it takes a lot of trust from the industry, from the non-market providers, to put that faith in us that we will deliver that land to them. We will help them. We'll support them. We'll make sure it's clean and safe. A lot of times we see co-located services. You want to see housing with a daycare, with some social workers, with whatever wraparound services are needed for that specific, Calgarians' needs. And so it is so simple, but like anything, it's so simple. And then you get into the detail and you start to understand why it's a big, scary thing that a lot of municipalities haven't taken on, but we're very proud to have taken those meaningful strides to getting it done.
And I said logical, not simple, because there's nothing about this that's simple. Fair. And I get that part, but it is a very logical approach, right? Yeah. The City of Calgary, the biggest landowner, what can we do to contribute? So exactly. Sorry, Bev, you were about to say.
I was just going to say thank you. I'm really pleased to hear Reid say this, because this is one of probably the in our opinion, the strongest initiatives, action items in from a non-profit affordable housing provider's perspective in the strategy. And, we encourage Reid and team to work through, and we will always, as a sector, collaborate closely if we can with the city to be able to deliver those properties quickly, efficiently, and into the hands of providers who can turn them into doorknobs and
rooftops and doorknobs.
Rooftops and doorknobs.
I don't know how catchy it is, but I'm trying to see if it'll catch on.
If we keep saying it, it'll catch on.
Exactly.
Nice. So now we've talked a lot about the challenges, but surely there must be some good news stories that have happened in your areas in the past year. So, maybe Bev, you first.
Well, we haven't spoken a lot about market housing, but I will say that in my humble opinion, probably one of the successes we've had over the last couple of years since the Home is Here strategy came into place is some success in terms of increasing the supply of market housing, which is not to say that we should not continue to be diligent. We can't be complacent on that. But I think there is a bit of a good news story in that. And I know that the City of Calgary has worked hard with market housing providers to builders and developers to deliver on that action. On the not-for-profit side, the affordable housing, we've talked about advancing land and some of the other actions, which is great. I think from our perspective, one of the good news pieces is that the City of Calgary and council and administration at the highest level are all pulling in the same direction. We all recognize the need. We recognize the critical need on the affordable side. And, we don't have to walk into a meeting with any order of government and explain the need. The need is understood. We just need to work together to figure out how we can find solutions. And all orders of government, I think, are pulling in the same direction on this. So again, that to me is probably the good news story of the year.
Nice. Reid?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to probably apologize in advance, but it's just because it comes down to a lot of numbers. And, to build on the market side of things, like Calgary is Canada's housing engine in 2025. We are not the best on a per capita basis. We are the best on an absolute basis. We have produced more housing than Toronto has, than Vancouver has, than any of these major metropolitan cities that are double, triple our population. We are still creating more housing. We're on pace. We're on 3 years in a row of breaking records as far as overall housing unit completion is concerned. And we are on pace for a massively record-breaking 4th year. And that's not on accident. That's because of a business-friendly approach. That's because of some innovative ways we look at permitting. That's listening and working with the development sector. And I think that's really important. On the non-market side, on a typical year as a bit of a framework, we would have maybe 100 to 300 permits a year for non-market housing. Last year, we had 893.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so as we jump from 2024 and we look back at 2023 was a fairly low year. So we saw an 850% increase in the first year of the strategy. That's massive. Now, it falls well short of the 3,000 a year target that we want, but it's my hope that we can continue to build. We have a variety of programs. We have the Housing Capital Initiative, where we're, released $30 million that created 480 homes with 7 different providers. We're about to release the second tranche of 30 million in about a month here. As we continue to work through this, we have an Indigenous housing program. That's another $30 million focused on just Indigenous housing. We have the non-market land sale. That's 17 parcels of land that's over 850 non-market units in this innovative way that we're selling land at cost. I think there is a lot of great wins. And so we need to keep that in mind. But at the same time, we need to be thoughtful about where we are and that we had a big gap to make up and we need to continue to attack it with intention. We can't rest on our laurels. We really do need to close that gap.
A lot of positive activity you just outlined there. That's a lot of work. I'm assuming your task is more a marathon than a sprint, right? So there is no finish line where you're going to say, oh, we succeeded. The housing problem is solved and we can all go home now, right? Yeah. What does success look like?
It's a really interesting question. It really is. CMHC, on a very interesting stance last week, 2 weeks ago, released a report where they reset the federal expectation. And they said, from a federal perspective, we think affordability is pre-COVID. We just want to get to pre-COVID prices, right? In the city of Calgary, I think we really need to focus on what we can control. There's so many macroeconomic pressures that come into a housing consideration, right? If you look back in the last 6 months to a year, you have tariffs, you have interest rate settings from the Bank of Canada, you have immigration policies, you have a federal election, you have all these things that are fundamentally out of a city's control. And so when you ask, what does success look like? I think that framing is important because from my perspective, success looks like controlling what we can control, advocating for things that we can't, and ensuring that we're hitting the targets in the strategy and that we're seeing that gap of housing delivery to the housing needs of Calgarians getting closer and closer and closer. But this is not a problem that was created in 2 years. And based on that, it's not a problem that can be fixed in 2 years, right? This is a problem that's going to take time to work its way through a very complex system. But I think it's important, Calgarians, here that we have these metrics. We have 3,000 non-market a year. We have these programs that we're doling out on regular intervals to encourage that housing from the private sector. And we are going to continue to track that progress every year with council, making sure we're hitting those targets and resetting along the way where we need to.
Wow. Bev?
Yes, well, and this might be a bit cheeky, but based on our earlier conversation, success to me on the nonprofit affordable housing side is no more wait lists. And, I think it's that opportunity, is it achievable? I certainly hope that it is. It is more than a marathon, not a sprint, more than a marathon. So hopefully in my lifetime, but it is so positive that everyone was working toward that, and to be able to see some success in terms of reducing wait lists would be a wonderful thing. Seeing every Calgarian with a safe, affordable, appropriate home over their heads couldn't make either of us any happier, I'm sure.
For sure. And sorry if I can, I just want to point out, we've been in this strategy for about 18 months and we're now starting to see some of these effects. We're seeing prices soften a little bit in, the single detached or the duplex market segments. We're seeing rental rates starting to come off and vacancy rates not be 1%. They're a little bit more 4%, 4.5%, 5%, depending on where you look and whose data you want to use. And so I take that as a great sign that these steps we're taking to inject this supply is starting to be recognized. And then of course, the good comes with the bad, say a couple percent decline year over year needs to recognize that we've had about a 30% run up and to the right over the last 4 years as it relates to home prices. And so, a 3% fall off or a 2% fall off is a great sign that we're no longer increasing. And now it's continuing as down that path to make housing more affordable back to where it was in Calgary's recent history.
Well, I want to thank you both for spending a little bit of time with me. And I really, really do admire your passion for the tasks that you have before you. Anything I've forgotten to ask? Anything you want to add?
I think the only thing I'd want to add is that I just want Calgarians to know that we hear your concerns. We're looking to address them. This is not a set in stone process. This is a malleable process. We report back regularly. We're always listening to the sector, market, non-market, Calgarians, everyday public hearings. And we are using that feedback to inform how we operate every day. And like any good business, any good strategy document, you got to set it in stone so you can have somewhere to target and begin. But then you do need to look every quarter, every month, whatever your schedule is, and say, what can we do different and what can we change? And we are in that process always, right? We're refining, we're taking this forward. And I just want to thank you as well. And thank you, Bev. And I look forward to the years to come and how we can continue to make a difference as it relates to housing.
Bev?
Yes, I would like to add that the fact that we have a chief housing officer in the City of Calgary, Reid Hendry, and that Reid is equipped with a passionate and dedicated team to support him to bring about more housing supply and on the non-market and the market side speaks to all of us about the dedication, commitment, and passion within the City of Calgary to essentially work towards solving our housing crisis. And from an external perspective, we're very appreciative of that.
Thank you both again for the great conversation.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. As always, we value your feedback, so please reach out to us at calgaryconversations@calgary.ca and tell us what topics you'd like covered and questions you'd like answered. Until next time, be kind to yourselves, kind to each other, and if you see someone without a smile today, give them yours. Take care.